it's pretty fascinating to see to look at the politics of this, I think, because, we're talking a lot about, it's a little bit unclear exactly how these things are going to work in practice and how, like, I don't know. Do you have maybe a guess at how many more people are going to have to get a license after this? It'd seem to be hard to estimate that.
I mean, yeah, I don't think there's any way to know because, again, of how vaguely these rules are written. Obviously, like you said, we'll get into the politics of this in a second. Obviously, I think the intent is to encourage as many people as possible to apply for an FFL. At the same time, the ATF is being sued over their zero tolerance policies for FFLs, right? Where they're revoking licenses for, minor clerical errors and things of that nature. So it's interesting. I mean, on the one hand, they are definitely pushing more people to become FFLs. At the same time, they're trying to actively reduce the number of FFLs in existence. And
also, I would note too, to that point, that they do reemphasize in here that you still have to have a place of business to be an FFL. So, for instance, there's a lot of people, I think even myself here where I live, in an apartment, I don't believe I can run a place of business out of my apartment. So I'd have to rent somewhere if I wanted to obtain an FFL personally. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Some areas and states let you register businesses in your home, of course, but a lot of them have restrictions on where you can operate a firearms business. So that is another sort of thing of like, well, why don't you just go get an FFL? Well, while oftentimes administrations like the Biden administration or the Obama administration will try to tell you that they want you to get the FFL, they also don't make it very difficult for you to actually have one in practice.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's part and parcel of how the gun control side works. I mean, you see the same thing in places like Washington, D.C. or Chicago when it comes to concealed carry licenses, right? We're going to mandate that you get this training that you can't find inside the city limits. In Washington, D.C., you can't. I think there might be one or two FFLs now that are doing transfers, but there's still no ranges, right? There's still no commercial gun stores in those places. So they tell you have to do this, and then they make it very difficult for you to do these things. And right. Whether it's, again, selling a firearm or buying a firearm or carrying a firearm, that seems to be a commonality.
Yeah, I think that's a major flaw in all this. Like that sort of undercuts the intentions at play, or at least makes it fair to question them for sure. Now, at the same time, though, I look at this and this seems even less aggressive, at least from what I've read thus far, than even President Obama did with his executive order, which was to sort of imply that anybody who sold even one gun might have to get an FFL. Now, they still have that same basic concept in this, but you look at the chatter that was going on before this was issued, and a lot of it was like, we want to try and get to universal background checks without passing a universal background check law. And this doesn't seem to do that, right? I mean, this seems to be significantly more modest than that. What is your take on it? Do you think that's right, or am I being a little bit too limited in my view of this?
You may be a little optimistic. Again, so much of this, depends on how this rule is going to be enforced. And I don't think that you can expect this rule to be enforced modestly. That's the big issue. No, it's not universal background checks, right? Family members, for example, are exempt, although I'm not sure that they define family members, right? So your son or daughter may be covered. What about your cousin or your uncle or your stepniece? And I do think that the goal still is, quote unquote, universal background checks. But part of me wonders if maybe the reason why they are, couching their language the way they are is because they're tired of being smacked down by the courts. You look at going back to the Trump administration, the bump stock ban has been overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and I believe the Sixth Circuit as well, right? Supreme Court has not yet weighed in, but then you've also had federal courts around the country say that the frame and receiver rule and the stabilize embrace rule are violations of the Administrative Procedures Act. Again, we don't have final determinations on those cases, but this could be, the ATF saying, all right, well, let's write this maybe more narrowly than we would have wanted, in the hopes that, it gives us a better shot at having this rule actually upheld for once.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's what it feels like to me. Because a lot of the stuff in here, while there's certainly the ambiguity that we talked about and the potential for, abuse of some of these standards, a lot of this stuff was kind of already the case, right? Like you saw this in convictions going back to the 70s when these rules were first being challenged. People have been convicted under the previous understanding of all this for selling, a dozen guns within a 30-day period, for selling guns and making as little as $350 a profit. A lot of this stuff is not really new, from what I can tell, and that's where I wonder if they really did try to rein it in a little bit, especially compared to what the gun control groups seemed to. There was a lot of reporting in the run up to this. They really wanted him to push the boundaries on this, and I don't know that he has.
I mean, it may still end up pushing the boundaries in practice because, the ATF, and you're right. I mean, the ATF even said, we've never said that you have to actually make a profit selling a firearm. And we've never said there's a specific number of guns that have to be sold before you are engaged in the business. So in that sense, the ATF says, well, we're just maintaining the status quo, right? The problem is, again, that's a really vague and fuzzy status quo. And if they start enforcing this proposed rule as strictly as they're enforcing, the regulations regarding current FFLs,
the zero
where
tolerance.
revocation's up 430%, and you've got even more folks who are, simply giving up their license rather than trying to fight City Hall, then this could be really problematic really quickly. And again, I mean, I think that this was a gift to the gun control groups ahead of 2024. And so they're going to expect and I think demand that this proposed rule, if it takes effect, be enforced as strictly as they're enforcing their, zero tolerance policies towards existing FFLs.